Thanks so much for taking a minute to watch these video directions. Let's take a look inside so you know how to use this with your students. First, always have students write their name on the outside of the book. And then once you open it up, everything that you need for the entire week will be inside your book. Now, on this particular week, there are some spelling words and some decoding activities that go along with the short O, so you'll see that throughout the entire book. Each week, so then moving on to week 2, it'll be a new medial vowel sound, and so on. So with this, I always start with sight words. And so with this, I have these flashcards. They're very basic and included in the file for you to download. And so with this, I start by asking my kids, ooh, do you know what this word is? Sometimes, depending on how far into the program you are, they might already know it. Good job, this is the word is. And sometimes you really need to explicitly teach it. Tell them, what does the word mean? Or in this case, how do we use this word? Give some example sentences. If you are Orton Gillingham trained, or if this is something that you're familiar with, we know arm tapping. So with something like this, I hold it out so that the students at my table can see the word, and then we arm tap it. So we would say I-S, is, I-S, is, I-S, is. You can repeat this anywhere from 3 to 5 times, depending on how much or how little your students seem to know that word. How familiar are they with that word? And then after we arm tap, I'll say, now find the word is. And so then this lets the student start seeing it in real life. Here it is in the text. Then we move on to our next word. And again, I'll ask them, does anybody know this word? If they do, great. If they don't, we're going to tell them. We're going to hold it out so that they can see it, hear it, and feel it. And then we would find the word see. And we talk about how it's in the title. If it were a word with a capital letter, we would talk about why does that have a capital letter? Why is it capitalized here but not here? Have those conversations with your students because a lot of them are very, very capable of understanding why they are or are not capitalized. So we would repeat that with all of these words. For the sake of this video, I am not going to make you sit through me arm tapping each and every word. Then we move on to decodable words, and I use green for these. Honestly, I don't care what colors you use. Pick a couple and stick with it. I like these because you can buy them in bulk. So with this then, again, Orton Gillingham, we pound the words. Other schools use tapping the words. There are lots of different multi-sensory strategies. Use what works for you. Again, I like pound the word just because that was how I was trained. And so for me, we'll say, usually I'll say, point to the first letter. Ooh, what sound does that make? And so some know, some don't. You can model or you could have them read independently. So with this, I might say, ooh, d, ah, t, dot. And then we would see if that word is here. So then we're looking for dot, dot, dot. Oh no, this word isn't here. That one is an X. But then we talk about how these words, they have the same beginning. They have the same vowel in the middle, but guess what? Those words are different at the end. And my kids, after, a few months of doing this, by maybe halfway through, they're using words like, these words are similar. These words are different. Ooh, look at the medial vowel, things like that, because that's what I use whenever we talk about it. So here, the word dot wasn't there, but guess what? When we pound this word, we do see that the word dog is in the story. And again, we would repeat, hot is not there, but hog is. And, I should have really highlighted these just so that you could see the majority of this story is either decodable, because Rob and Bob would also be decodable words, or they would be high frequency words that we are already working on and practicing. So after we do this, then we are going to use some scented markers As pointers, you could use something more fun, but oftentimes for me, I don't have the patience for that. So I might have them point at the title, and I would read, I see. Then we read the story. I see Rob. He is a dog. I see Bob. He is a hog. After I read to them, we color in our first smiley face. I love these scented markers. A lot of times I can say, okay, color in your smiley face. Smell your scented marker, and they can smell. And then I'll say, grab a new marker and meet me at the top in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then they meet me back at the top. Then you can decide what is a good way to read. So for example, sometimes I have students echo me. So I might say, I see, and wait for them. Rob, wait for them. He is, wait for them, and then color in the next smiley face. But then there are times where, that's just too boring, especially the further you get into this, they're able to read some of these things. And so then you can start encouraging some independence. Let's take turns reading. Maybe you have them whisper read. Maybe you give them a job. I want you to find the sight word. If there was something not used, like the word the, or can, something else, you could have them look for a word. You could have them look for a spelling pattern. There are lots of things that you can do to make this both interactive and get some repeated readings, which we know is research-based. Then I'll tell my students, grab a pencil, meet me at number 1, and again, I count down. Who is Rob? And then we would see. Sometimes what I'm looking for is who knows this right away because they have great memorization skills or good memory skills, and who can use their resources and see, oh, here's Rob. He is a dog. Oh gosh, I bet Rob is a dog. Who is Bob? Oh man, it's got to be he is a hog. And we go on from there. Now, I do not want to waste your time with all of these explanations on this left-hand side of the page because they are all exactly the same. We do the same thing each and every day. We read it as many times as possible. We highlight our words, all of those things. However, I do want to give you some grace here. If this is all you make it through and you never touch this side, that's okay. If you only read it 1 or 2 times so that you can get to this side, that's okay. If you're having a busy day and they've been doing quite well with sight words and you want to skip that, that's okay. Use your best judgment. You're the teacher. You're the adult. You know what they need. It's okay to pick and choose depending on what you need. So with this, we have a mixed up sentence, and usually I read it very silly. I'll say, okay, here's our sentence today, guys. Is he dog A? And they all look at me. Oh, that doesn't make any sense. How could we know that, or what word is going to go at the beginning of the sentence? And we write, he. We can talk about those capital letters. We can talk about finger spaces. We can talk about punctuation marks and nice, neat handwriting. Oops. We can talk about how everybody makes mistakes. He is a dog. Very good. Okay. Now, this is a new addition to the most recent update. And again, this is based on science of reading research. So what I do is I have my students point to the word and I say, this is the word, or this is a picture of a cob. Say cob. And I wait for them to say that. Then I'll say, push your buttons and let's say the sounds in the word cob. K-a-b. Cob. And then k-a-b. Write the word cob. We would repeat, point to this picture. This is a picture of a log. Say log. They would say that. Push your buttons and say the sounds, and then they would write it. And then again, this was an update because a lot of our lower level students, if they're in upper grades, if they don't know some of this information, like their first and their last name, oftentimes there's some of our lower IQ students and they need some practice with that. And then if they're more typical, Maybe you're using this as a general education intervention. Maybe you're using this with just some first graders who maybe have some behavioral difficulties or something. Knowing their first and last name is important, and oftentimes they don't get a lot of practice with that. On day 2, then, we have a sentence where there are 3 mistakes. So with this, I usually give my students a few minutes or, 1 minute and say, can you find our 3 mistakes? And I'm just watching. I'm just observing. What do they notice? Do they see that, ooh, we don't have a capital letter. We don't have a punctuation mark. Ooh, one of those sight words that we've been practicing this week is not spelled correctly. And then they can write the word. As I told you before, use your best judgment. This is often something, the actual writing of the sentence, that if I am running short on time, I do allow them to skip. But this is also something that then later in the week, if you have a phone call or you need to assess a student, this is something that they can do on their own later. I also like to use bingo chips for this, where we have the picture and we say the sounds. You can also have them point to these, whatever works for your students. Sometimes the bingo chips are just a distraction. So with this, I'll say, here's the word rod. Let's point to our boxes and say the sounds. D, rod. Now let's say the sounds. I like to give my students a name tag with the letters on it if they need it, because sometimes they know but they don't know what letter goes with that. And so you would repeat, here's the word fog, or a picture of the word fog. Let's say the sounds. F-A-G. Now let's write it. F-A-G. So this is something that, again, at the beginning of the year, it starts out really difficult. You can use things like their name tags. They can copy from yours, whatever might work, so that you can get it done. But it does get easier as the year goes on. So here we have a sentence. He is big. And so with this sentence, we are going to expand it. And we talk about how, or with me, I talk about my students that they're not 3 years old. And so writing words or sentences with 3 words, that's a little lower than what I would want for them. And so we're going to work on expanding our sentences. And so with that, our goal is to maybe to get 4, 5, 6 words. So I usually start, a lot of students working in this red level, reading and writing is still hard for them, or maybe it's just new for them. So with this, it's okay if all we're adding is 1 word. So he is big. And I might ask my students to help me make a list of words that maybe we would want to put in here. So maybe we want to say he is really big, or he is very big. I could see kids saying he is super big. Whatever words we want to put in there. Maybe instead of he, we want to find out what the hog's name is, and we want to look back and say, you know what? The hog's name is Bob. So I'm going to say Bob is big, or Bob the hog is big. And so what I want students to notice is that they do have the potential, they have the ability, with some help and some scaffolds here, to write some bigger, juicier sentences. Then we have a fluency passage. This is included because a lot of students have goals around fluency, and it is good. We know that kids who can read more fluently tend to have better comprehension. So it's just one thing along with many that we need to practice. So with this, I have my students. I see Rob. He is a dog. And I'll time them. Sometimes 1 minute is too long. The frustration level, especially at this level, is too high. And so maybe instead of 1 minute, maybe you want to do 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever makes sense for your students, and see how they get. Maybe the first time they only make it through the first sentence. That's okay. We write the number 3. And then from there, we'll say, okay, now we're going to do it a second time. Are there any words you need help with? So let's say the name was really tricking that student. we could help them stretch it out before we start our second reading. Maybe we get down here and, he at this level is not something that we've talked about a lot. So maybe they need help with the word he. You can help them with that before you go on to your next reading. So then maybe, we get 2 more words. And let's say, we get 4 more words. And we just really work on that growth mindset. It's fine if it's 3. Let's work on getting better without cheating. Because sometimes when you're not paying attention, or if you're working with another student, suddenly they do really good. They read all 14 words. Yay for them. Next is a vocabulary portion. So this was something that I really felt the reading intervention was missing for several years. So I'm excited about this addition because we know vocabulary ties so heavily into comprehension. So with this, we have the word farm, and students can draw a picture of that. While they're drawing, you can be talking about, what is a farm? It's a place for growing crops. It's a place where maybe animals are. All of those things can be verbal, and then their picture is kind of what we're really focusing on at this level. If you want to have them write words, you could certainly do that. But oftentimes just with time and that kind of thing, we just don't have it. And it's fine if they copy your picture. Then we have 2 words here that we can add different endings to. And what I call these, I'm very dramatic when I say it, we have Mrs. Wilp's list of approved endings. And so with these words, we could have hops or hopping or hopped, as in the past tense. And with some of these, especially where we're learning short vowels, a lot of times we have to talk about doubling that consonant and adding our ending, whatever that happens to be. And I have these endings displayed in my classroom all the time so that we can reference them, whether we're reading, whether we're writing, trying to spell a word, whatever it is. Then we have the word see. A lot of these words will be verbs, not always, because, we can make it past tense, present tense, that kind of thing. But here we have the word see. Some kid's going to say seed. Well, I seed that yesterday. And we can talk about some of these words being irregular. Well, actually, we would say saw. That doesn't quite fit. Can we think of another ending? Maybe instead of seed, because that is not correct, or seeing, we could just add an S, sees. So all of our endings can be added to our words. Then we end with a compound word, and when possible, they go together. And I want students to circle the 2 words. You could also have them divide it in half, whatever kind of suits your fancy there. But I read this to the students. Here's the word doghouse. Now, can you pick out what is the first word or the first word that makes up this compound word? Doghouse. And it's, again, okay if it's ugly initially, it'll get better in time. All right, last but not least, on day 4, we have 2 short sentences, and we work to combine those 2 sentences. So with this, we have, I see my mom, I see my pop. So what I have my students do is circle, highlight, underline, whatever your little heart desires, words that are the same. So here, it's the same in both. I'm not going to write that 2 times. See, not writing that 2 times. My and my, same thing there. So then we can write, I see my, because that's what's the same. Now we have to take care of this. So now this is where we talk about conjunctions. And, or, what would make sense here? A lot of the times, not always, it's going to be and. I see my mom and pop. And, again, talking about punctuation. We would repeat again with fluency. We would repeat again with a different vocabulary word. And then I use this just to kind of gauge what my students can and cannot do. So this is very similar to what we did together on day 2. But how are they doing with, here's the word dog. What is the missing letter? It's okay if you have to guide them through it, but it makes for a really great assessment. So if you have any questions, please make sure you reach out. I hope you love this reading intervention as much as I do.